Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Are we going to have a catch up with Theo or not? Is he there, Theo?
I am here,
Oh,
James.
spooky. You're not here, you're on the phone.
Yes, Steve Baker, the Brexit minister, he's apologised. To provide you with a bit of context to this, we saw the publication of leaks, advice from the Treasury Cabinet Office, those impact assessments that Britain was going to be poorer in every scenario of Brexit. Steve Baker went to the House of Commons and told MPs that economic forecasters were always wrong. Instead of getting a slap down, Number 10 let him off while having a pop at the Justice Minister, Philip Lee. He was hauled in because he said, actually, the government should be really careful. So he then goes back into the House of Commons. This is Steve Baker yesterday, feeling really cocksure, really confident. And he's asked this question.
Theo, I'm so sorry. We'll hear that in a second. I just want to interrupt with some breaking news regarding Darren Osborne, the Finsbury Park terrorist who has just been sentenced to 43 years in jail. The judge described his pathetic last-ditch attempt to mislead the jury. I think he claimed that the van had been driven by a bloke called Dave, who he'd met in the pub. But no mercy brooked there. 43 years, and the judge is speaking of the rapid radicalisation. We should probably cross live to court. Should we try and set that line up? We'll try and set that line up while Theo just brings us back up to speed. Have you got the Jacob Rees Mogg question in the House of Commons?
Let's hear what Jacob Rees Mogg said yesterday.
Will my honourable friend, the Minister and Member for Wickham, confirm that he heard from Charles Grant for the Centre of European Research that officials in the Treasury had deliberately developed a model to show that all options other than staying in the customs union were bad, and that officials intended to use this to influence policy?
Very conveniently not coming up with some highfalutin account of what would happen if it turns out not to be true. Mr. Rees Mogg, of course, could have added, and if it turns out not to be true, would that make me a barefaced liar abusing parliamentary privilege to bring hearsay into the public discourse? But I'm getting ahead of you, Theo.
It was basically from Jacob Rees Mogg, is the Treasury and civil servants who are supposed to be impartial, are they sabotaging Brexit? The Minister, Steve Baker, instead of saying that's absolute rubbish, he said this.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to say that my honourable friend's account is essentially correct. At the time, I considered it implausible because my direct experience is that civil servants are extraordinarily careful to uphold the impartiality of the civil service. I think that we must proceed with great caution in this matter, but I have heard him raise this issue. I think that we need to be very careful not to take this forward in an appropriate way, but he has reminded me of something which I heard. I think it would be quite extraordinary if it turned out that such a thing had happened.
Steve Baker there. Now, Number 10 yesterday let Mr. Baker off the hook, but today he's been hauled back in front of the House of Commons.
Just to clarify, they said they'd spoken to him and they had no reason to doubt his account.
Yes.
After which a tape recording emerged of the conversation he's alluding to, in which Jacob Rees Mogg claimed to have heard of.
Exactly, and that's where Steve Baker then finds himself at daggers drawn with the civil service, and then is hauled back into the House of Commons to apologise profusely.
The audio of that conversation is now available, and I am glad the record stands corrected. In the context of that audio, I accept that I should have corrected or dismissed the premise of my honourable friend's question. I have apologised to Mr. Charles Grant, who is an honest and trustworthy man. As I have put on record many times, I have the highest regard for our hard-working civil servants. I'm grateful for this early opportunity to correct the record, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I apologise to the House.
So, did he lie to the House?
Essentially,
let's get the first line of the first clip.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to say that my honourable friend's account is essentially correct.
OK, now the first line of the Rees Mogg question.
My honourable friend, the Minister and Member for Wickham, confirmed that he heard from Charles Grant for the Centre of European Research that officials in the Treasury had deliberately developed a model.
So Rees Mogg said is it true you heard Charles Grant say this? He said, yes, it is true. Downing Street believed him. The tape came out in which he categorically didn't say that. So he has then, after being let off the hook by Downing Street, had to apologise for lying through his teeth in the middle of the House of Commons in response to nonsense rumours being percolated by Jacob Rees. Ridiculous.
Do you know the best thing about this, James?
Go on.
Steve Baker's still got a job.
What was that thing? What's that thing called? Rhymes with ministerial woad.
Sorry, what?
Ministerial woad?
I don't know. You carry on. What?
Anyway, you get back to your weekend.
Oh yes.
Many thanks. Many thanks for interrupting your ablutions. There you go. That's where we are now in Britain. A Minister of State, well, Minister of Government can actually lie in the House of Commons and then apologise for the lie while claiming that he's delighted the record was set straight. That's why I played it to you twice. That's where we are. Brexit Britain.